"Kiss me or you're fired," the CEO demanded. The single dad's reply shattered her. "Kiss me or you're fired." Vivian Cross said it the way she signed termination letters. Bored, certain, already moving on to the next thing. The executive floor was empty. 42 stories above the city, the glass walls held nothing but reflections and the low hum of a building gone quiet for the night. Daniel Mercer stood beside her office door in his gray maintenance uniform, a wrench still in his hand, and looked at the most powerful woman at Sterling Dynamics like she'd just told him the elevator was broken. She smiled. She was used to that. The freeze, the panic, the quick math every employee did when she made the air go cold. "You heard me," she said, stepping closer, her heels silent on the carpet. "One kiss, or security walks you out tonight, and I make sure you never get hired in this city again." She tilted her head, studying him like a thing she might purchase. "Your choice, handyman." What Vivian didn't know was that the man in the gray uniform had signed the paperwork 3 days earlier that made him the majority owner of Sterling Dynamics. What she didn't know was that by Friday, she would be the one escorted out. Her name stripped from the lobby directory, her parking space repainted, 30 years of career ending in a glass conference room full of people who used to flinch when she walked past. She thought she held all the power in that hallway. She had no idea she was talking to the man who signed her paychecks. 6 hours earlier, Daniel Mercer had been on his hands and knees on a kitchen floor, gluing a plastic unicorn's horn back on while his daughter cried. The unicorn belonged to Lily, who was 7, and certain that a horn reattached with the wrong glue would never be magic again. Daniel found the right glue. He always found the right glue. That was the bargain he'd made with himself 3 years before, the morning after Claire's funeral, when he'd stood in the doorway, watching his daughter sleep in a bed too big for her, and decided that whatever else he failed at, he would not fail at the small things. "Better than magic," he told her, holding the unicorn up to the window light. "Now it's been through something. That's how you know it's real." Lily weighed this with the seriousness of a judge. Then she hugged the unicorn and him and asked if he was going to the big silver building again. 2 more weeks, he said. The big silver building was Sterling Dynamics, 42 floors of aerospace contracts and frosted glass downtown. 2 weeks was the deal Daniel had with himself, and with the board chair, Eleanor Whitfield, who was the only person in the building who knew his real name. He could have walked through those doors as what he was. Founder of Mercer Holdings, the quiet firm that had just bought a controlling stake in the whole company. He could have ridden the private elevator to the top and let everyone scramble. Instead, he'd pulled on a gray uniform and clipped on a badge that said, "Dan Mercer, Facilities," and gone to fix toilets and tighten bolts. He did it with every company he bought. 2 weeks invisible, watching how the people at the top treated the people who couldn't help their careers. You learned more about a company from a janitor's closet than a boardroom. He'd learned that the hard way a long time ago, in a different life. He made Lily's lunch, peanut butter, crusts off, a note that said, "You are braver than you think," and dropped her at his mother's before the sun was fully up. He took the bus. The man worth more than the building took the 6:40 bus and gave his seat to a woman with grocery bags. At Sterling, nobody looked at the maintenance guy. That was the point. He restocked the 3rd-floor supply room, replaced a flickering ballast on 5, and ate a sad sandwich alone in the basement break room, where he met Sarah Bennett. Sarah worked in accounts payable, 2 years in, a single mom raising a 6-year-old boy named Theo. She was the only person in the building who said good morning to the facilities staff like they were people. She sat across from him that day because every other table was full, then stayed because she'd say later. He was the first person at Sterling who asked her a question and actually waited for the answer. She caught him reading once. Between calls, on his break, Daniel had a folder of dense financial pages spread on the table. Acquisition language, debt schedules. The kind of thing facilities techs don't carry. She raised an eyebrow. Heavy reading for a lunch break. He closed the folder, unhurried, old habit. I went to business school. Long time ago. And now you fix the heating? Now I fix the heating. He smiled, and there was something behind it she couldn't place. Different life. She let it go. But she'd remember those two words, different life, and how he said them like a door he'd closed on purpose. What Sarah didn't know was that the different life had ended with a buyout, a fortune, and a grief that made boardrooms feel pointless. She'd find out soon enough. They all would. She didn't have to wait long to see who Vivian Cross was. By his third day, Daniel had watched the CEO make a junior analyst cry for bringing her the wrong sparkling water. He'd watched her dress down a receptionist in the lobby, loud enough that visitors looked at their shoes. Vivian Cross ran Sterling Dynamics the way some people drive in traffic, like everyone else was an obstacle placed there to inconvenience her. "She's worse than you think," Sarah told him in the break room, voice low, even though they were alone. Last year, a woman in marketing, Dana, filed a complaint. Said Vivian had been making her uncomfortable. Touching, cornering people. Comments. Sarah wrapped both hands around her coffee. Dana doesn't work here anymore. The complaint just disappeared. And the man you should report things to is the man who made it disappear. That man was Gerald Price, Chief People Officer, head of HR, in the old language. 52, expensive watch, a handshake like a wet napkin. Gerald had spent 11 years learning exactly one skill, making problems vanish before they reached the board. He called it protecting the brand. Vivian called him loyal. The people who'd left quietly, with checks and signed silence, would have called him something else. Daniel said nothing. He just listened. He was good at that. But that night, alone in his cramped apartment after Lily was asleep, he opened his laptop and sent Eleanor Whitfield one line: "Pull every settlement HR has signed in the last 5 years." Quietly, he didn't know yet how soon he'd need it. By the end of that week, Vivian Cross would hand him the reason herself. It started small the way these things do. Vivian noticed him, not as a person, as a curiosity, a maintenance man who held her eye instead of dropping it, who didn't flinch. Power that meets no resistance gets bored, and boredom in Vivian curdled into appetite. She started finding reasons to be where he was. A jammed door on her floor. A thermostat that needed personal attention. She'd lean in the doorway and watch him work and ask questions that weren't really about thermostats. "You're not like the others down there," she said once, the word down doing a lot of quiet work. "You could do better than a tool belt." "I could arrange things." A pause, waited. "I take care of people who take care of me." "I'm good where I am," Daniel said, and kept working. Vanessa, Vivian, was not a woman accustomed to "I'm good where I am." It landed like a slap she pretended not to feel. She left. But she came back. They always came back. Sarah saw it happening and got scared on his behalf. "Be careful," she said. "I've seen this." She decides she wants something, and when she can't buy it, she breaks it. She hesitated, then added, quieter, "And if she breaks you, Gerald cleans up the pieces. There's no one to tell. That's the whole machine." "There's always someone to tell," Daniel said. "Not here." Sarah looked at him with something close to grief. That's what nobody believes until it's them. He almost told her, then almost said, "I own this building. I own the machine." and I'm about to take it apart. But he'd learned that the truth lands harder when it's earned, not announced. So he just said, "Then maybe it's time someone changed how things work here." Sarah laughed, not unkindly, the laugh of someone who'd stopped expecting rescue. "By who? You and your wrench?" "You'd be surprised," he said, "what a man with a wrench can fix." That night he stayed late on purpose. He had a feeling, the way you feel weather change before it breaks, that Vivian Cross was running out of patience. He was right. He was on the 42nd floor at 8:40 p.m., replacing a faulty sensor outside her office, when the elevator chimed and Vivian stepped out alone. She'd been at a donor dinner. There was wine in her walk and certainty in her smile, and she'd clearly made a decision in the back of whatever car had brought her home. Working late, handyman? She crossed the empty floor slowly. Or waiting for me? Just the sensor, Ms. Cross. He didn't look up. "Almost done. You're always almost done." She stopped close. "Too close. You've made me work for this. I don't work for things. People work for me." Her hand found his arm. "So here's where we stop pretending." That was the moment 6 hours had been building toward. The empty floor, the glass and the city lights, a wrench in a man's hand, and a CEO who had never once been told no in a way she couldn't punish. "Kiss me," she said. "Or you're fired. One kiss, and your problems are over. Refuse, and I'll make sure you don't have a job, a reference, or a reputation by morning." She smiled like she'd already won, because she always had. "Your choice." Daniel set the wrench down on the windowsill. He turned to face her fully, and for the first time all week he let her see who was actually standing there. Not the flinch she expected, but something steady and very, very calm. "No," he said. The word hung in the air like the temperature had dropped. Vivian's smile flickered. "Excuse me? You can't fire me, Miss Cross," quiet, almost gentle. "And I would never kiss someone who confuses fear with respect. You've spent so long mistaking one for the other, I don't think you know the difference anymore." Her face hardened into something ugly. "You arrogant little? Do you have any idea who I am? I am the CEO of this company. I will end you. I know exactly who you are," he said. "I've watched you all week. I know about Dana in marketing. I know about the woman in legal before her. I know about every check Gerald Price signed to keep you comfortable." He picked the wrench back up, slid it into his belt, unhurried. "And I know something you don't." "And what's that?" She spat. He met her eyes. "You'll find out Friday." "Good night, Miss Cross." He walked to the elevator. She stood frozen in the middle of her own kingdom, watching the gray uniform get into the car, and for the first time in years Vivian Cross felt the floor tilt under her. She fired him on the spot, screaming it at the closing doors. "You're fired. You're done. You're nothing." Security met him in the lobby with a form. He signed it without a word and stepped out into the cold. He should have felt afraid. He felt nothing but tired, and a strange grief for a woman who had so much and had turned it all into a weapon. He took out his phone in the dark parking lot and made one call. "Eleanor, it's Daniel. It's time. Call the emergency board session. Friday morning. And bring Gerald Price's file." A pause. No more quiet. "We do this in the open." He drove home, checked on Lily, sat on the edge of her bed. The fixed unicorn was tucked under her arm. "Now it's been through something," he told her. "That's how you know it's real." He sat there a long time. Then he opened his laptop and read, until midnight, every settlement Gerald had buried, every name, every signature, every woman who'd been made to disappear. What Daniel didn't know was that Sarah Bennett, at that exact hour across the city, had just gotten a call from a former coworker named Dana, who'd heard a rumor that someone finally said no to Vivian, and that by morning 3 of those buried women would decide they were done staying quiet. The balance of power had already begun to shift. None of them, not Vivian, not Gerald, not even Daniel, could yet see how far it would go. Friday came gray and bright. The 4th-floor conference room held the full board of Sterling Dynamics, 12 people around a long glass table, plus Vivian at the head of it in her best armor, a crimson suit, hair perfect. The file of a woman who'd survived 100 meetings like this. She'd spent the morning telling people about the unstable maintenance worker she'd had removed. She thought this meeting was about the acquisition. She was right. She just didn't know which side of it she was on. Gerald Price sat to her right, smiling at nothing, certain of his usefulness. Eleanor Whitfield, 66 and unbothered, stood. Thank you all for coming. As you know, Mercer Holdings completed its acquisition of a controlling interest in Sterling Dynamics this week. 58%. A murmur. The principal of Mercer Holdings has been on site for 2 weeks, evaluating the company directly before assuming the chairmanship. He's asked to introduce himself in person. Vivian straightened, already arranging her face into the smile she gave important men. The door opened. Daniel Mercer walked in. No uniform now, a plain dark suit, no tie. The same calm. He carried a single folder. The room didn't recognize him at first. Vivian did. Her champagne-colored coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. The blood left her face in a slow, visible tide. Crimson suit suddenly draining the color from everything above it. Beside her, Gerald frowned, glancing between his CEO and the man at the door, not yet understanding. Across the table, a younger board member named Priya Nair leaned to her neighbor and whispered something fast and urgent. Eleanor Whitfield watched Vivian's face and did not bother to hide her satisfaction. Good morning, Daniel said. For those who haven't met me, my name is Daniel Mercer. I own this company. He set the folder on the table. Some of you met me this week. I fixed your printers. Silence, the kind that has weight. 12 people stared at the man they'd walked past all week, recalculating every word they'd said within earshot of a janitor. Vivian found her voice, and to her credit, it almost held. Daniel, I had no idea. There's clearly been a terrible misunderstanding. If I'd known who you were, you'd have treated me differently, Daniel said. I know. That's the entire problem, Miss Cross. The way you treat people changes based on what they can do for you. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a character. He opened the folder. 2 nights ago, on the 42nd floor, you told a maintenance worker to kiss you or be fired. You then fired him. There's a sensor on that floor I was replacing when you said it. It logs audio for security calibration. I have it. So does Eleanor. Gerald Price went the color of paper. He understood now, fully, where the floor had gone. And you, Daniel turned to him, are the reason it kept happening. 11 years of settlements. Dana Okafor, Marisol Reyes, 4 others. You didn't protect this company, Gerald. You protected a predator and called it the brand. He slid copies down the table. The board members read. Several stopped reading and just stared. Vivian stood up so fast her chair rocked. This is a witch hunt. I built this company. I will not be ambushed by a man who spent 2 weeks playing dress-up. You didn't build it, Daniel said. And for the first time, his voice had an edge. You inherited a company full of good people and spent 6 years teaching them to be afraid. I spent 2 weeks here. Do you know who was kind to me, Miss Cross? Not the executives. A woman in accounts payable who shares her lunch table with the cleaning staff. That's who built whatever is still worth saving in this place. Not you. Vivian opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time in 30 years, Vivian Cross had no move. The room she'd ruled by fear was looking at her with something far worse than fear. Clarity. Eleanor Whitfield rose beside Daniel. The board will now vote on a motion to terminate the CEO and the Chief People Officer for cause, effective immediately. She didn't ask Vivian to leave. She simply began. All in favor. 12 hands, one after another, even the two Vivian thought she owned. Unanimous. After, in the quiet, Daniel found Sarah by the elevators on the 4th floor. Word had already raced through the building, the maintenance guy. The maintenance guy owns the whole thing. And she stood there looking at him like she was meeting a stranger wearing a familiar face. "You let me lecture you about how the machine works," she said. "You let me tell you there was no one to tell." "There wasn't anyone to tell," he said gently. "That was true. I had to become someone first." He paused. "I'm sorry I couldn't say. I needed to see it real, not performed. And I needed to know who you were before you knew who I was." A breath. "Now you know. Does it change things?" Sarah looked at this man. Billionaire, board chairman, the person who'd given his seat away on the 6:40 bus, and felt the strangest urge to laugh and cry at once. "You took the bus," she said. "Best part of my day," he said. "Somebody gave me directions to the good coffee on day 1. Single mom and accounts payable. Changed everything." And he smiled. And she understood that the consequences for Vivian Cross were not the only thing this week had set in motion. But before either of them could say more, Eleanor called him back. There was, it turned out, a great deal still to do, and Vivian Cross was not done falling. By the following Friday, the fall was complete. Vivian Cross was terminated for cause, which meant no severance, no soft landing, no quiet exit with a check and a story. The audio existed. The board had voted. Within a week, the trade press had the outline, and then the women who'd been paid to disappear began, one by one, to decide they no longer were. Donna Okafor went on the record. Then, Marisol, the story stopped being a rumor and became a reckoning. Vivian's name, once a passport into any room in the industry, became the thing people lowered their voices to discuss. The country club seat went unfilled. The board seats she'd been promised at other firms evaporated in a single afternoon of phone calls. She tried, once, to reach Daniel, left a voicemail that started furious and ended pleading. He didn't return it. He felt no triumph hearing she'd lost it all. Just a quiet, tired acknowledgement that people, in the end, are handed back exactly what they spent years building. She had built a fortress out of other people's fear. She got to live in it alone. Gerald Price was finished by the same vote. Worse for him, the buried settlements made him a liability the moment they surfaced. Every one of them a document with his signature on it, sworn to silence women so the brand could keep its shine. 2 of the cases reopened. The board's attorneys, who had once worked for him, now worked against him. By month's end, he'd been deposed twice, and hired no one was returning his calls. He sat in a house he could no longer easily afford and learned the thing Vivian was learning across town. Cruelty is loyal only until it costs you something. Daniel didn't celebrate either ending. He spent that week doing the unglamorous work of cleaning house, new HR leadership, a real reporting line, back pay for the people who'd been pushed out. He reinstated his own termination with a note that made the legal team laugh, because technically Vivian had fired the owner of the company. 3 months later, Daniel Mercer woke at 6:30. not to an alarm, but to a 7-year-old climbing onto his chest and announcing that the unicorn needed breakfast too. The apartment was the same modest size. He liked it that way. Liked that Lily's whole world fit in rooms he could cross in 3 steps. But there were new shoes by the door. Small ones, purple with a single white star on each toe. Exactly the one she'd circled in a catalog months ago, and he'd quietly told her were a someday thing. Someday had come. The unicorn rode in her backpack to school now, horn and all, magic and real at the same time. He made her lunch, crusts off, a note that said braver than you think, and this time he didn't take the bus, because Sarah was picking them both up. She'd started as the woman who shared a lunch table. 3 months had made her the person whose name Lily said in the same breath as we and us. It had gone slowly, on purpose. Both of them had been hurt before. Both had a child to protect. Neither was in a hurry to mistake comfort for something it wasn't. Daniel had spent a whole career watching people do exactly that. So they'd built it the way he fixed everything. Carefully, with the right glue. The kind that holds, because it took its time. That Saturday, the 4 of them, Daniel, Lily, Sarah, and Theo, sat on the apartment floor with a board game spread between them. The kids teamed up against the adults and winning by a margin that was almost certainly cheating. Rain started outside. Inside, it was warm. Theo declared the unicorn an official team member. Lily declared Theo okay, for a boy. Sarah caught Daniel's eye over the kids' heads. She still sometimes looked at him like she couldn't quite believe the bus and the boardroom were the same man. He reached over and found her hand on the carpet. Squeezed once. She squeezed back. The kids, certain the adults weren't listening, were whispering a plan about how to make their parents get married already. Daniel heard every word. He pretended not to. Some things you let children dream because they might be right, and the not knowing yet was its own small magic. He thought sometimes about Vivian Cross, about all that power turned into a weapon, all that height with nothing underneath it. And he looked at the floor of his small warm apartment, at the cheating children and the rain and the woman holding his hand, and understood the only arithmetic that had ever mattered. He'd been through something. That was how he knew it was real. End.